Epstein had some really disturbing things in his homes, but to me, this is one of the most. So this is an image of the interior of a room in Epstein's New York mansion. There's the EFTA number down there. And as you can see just by looking at this photo and these photos, this room, in my opinion, definitely looks like a children's room. It looks like a 2000s kids room. I mean, you've got like practical zebra print bedding, all these weird colors like the violet purple walls, the violet purple striped curtains. I mean, just all the colors. This definitely to me does not scream adult room, and it's got such an ominous feel to it. I mean, there's nothing on the walls. It feels like the back rooms almost. But it gets really eerie when you flip the camera around and you see what was facing the bed. Well, first of all, actually, let's talk about what this is. So I would like to know what was in this little container. Was this a box full of toys or fun supplies? I'm trying to be careful how I say this. I don't know what's in the box. Nobody knows what's in the box. One day I'd like to find out. But like I said, when you flip the camera around, as you can see here, there were 2 chairs facing the bed. Now, I get it. You can have a decorative chair in a bedroom. Usually those chairs don't really ever get used. They're for decoration. But these don't look like decorative chairs. I mean, they're clearly not. They're clearly chairs that people would sit on, kind of like a utility kitchen table chair. So why are there 2 of them in the bedroom facing the bed? That, to me, doesn't make sense. And, I mean, I can just imagine 2 older men sitting in those chairs watching what was going down on the bed. It's a horrific thing to think about. Then, though, you've got what was actually in front of the bed itself. So, as you can see, there's a mirror, which, once again, could be innocuous. But at the same time, having a mirror like that would allow the people in the bed to see what was going on in the bed, if that makes sense. And to take it a step further, you've even got a stuffed animal here, which clearly is something that a child would want or have. And it looks like a very childish stuffed lion. And then a golden, I'm assuming this is a box of tissues. And we know that tissues are frequently used after people do certain things in bed. So the mirror, the tissues, the lion, the theming of the room, the kids looking paint job. I mean, it's all incredibly just eerie to me to think about what could have happened in here and what more than likely did occur in this bedroom. But I'm not going to stop talking about this case until we actually start seeing some arrests. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and I will see y'all in the next video. This has got to be, in my opinion, the eeriest thing that I've seen in the Epstein files. As you can see, this is from a file marked highly confidential. There's the EFTA number bottom right hand corner. But you can see because of the SDNY tag down there, this came from the Southern District of New York's investigation and case. And this is an image of Epstein's mansion, specifically one of his bathrooms inside the mansion. And yes, right above the bathtub, you can see what appears to be a ghostly leg with 2 arms and hands sticking out of the wall. And this doesn't just appear to be any leg. I mean, in my opinion, it looks to be the leg of a child or a teenager. And yeah, I mean, there are so many things wrong with this. Right above the bathtub, I mean, also, I've never seen something like this in my life. The fact that it looks incredibly hyper-realistic. I mean, I was just scanning through the files in January, looking at everything when I came across this photo, totally just out there in the raw, and it spooked me. I mean, it was genuinely like, what the hell am I looking at? And I get it, people love art. Art can be weird, and I understand that. But Epstein loved to collect the body parts of specifically women. And he had a lot of different works of art depicting these kind of severed body parts and torsos and legs all throughout his different properties. I mean, these are just images from his New York property. I could go on and on. I know that in his Florida home, he had a pair of female buttocks mounted on the wall, which is, I mean, yeah, typical. But to me, there's so much that this piece of art says, and I think a lot of people are missing the point. So this is Real Housewives of New York star Carol Radziwill. But do you know who's next to Carol? That would be the one and only Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's essential business partner. Now, obviously, we all know that Ghislaine and Jeffrey were kind of socialites in New York City in the late 90s, early 2000s. My wife is a really big fan of the Real Housewives of New York, and I've talked to her about this a number of times, basically, questioning, do you think they ever ran into Epstein? They ever ran into Ghislaine? Well, clearly they did, because there are a ton of photos of Carol, one of the Real Housewives, with Ghislaine Maxwell. You can see here's another one right here. There are just so many. I can't remember this actress's name either, but I think she was on the show 30 Rock. But Ghislaine really got around. But Carol and Ghislaine weren't just friends. If you actually take a look at this photograph released by the DOJ, obviously you're going to see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. up there in the center. But take a look at the wall behind them. This is in Ghislaine Maxwell's house. Right there is a framed photograph of Carol, one of the Real Housewives. Now, it is interesting because typically you don't put people's pictures in frames and hang them in your house or display them in your home if you're not decently good friends with them. And yet, Carol has remained largely silent on this issue, only releasing a few statements saying that they met at a social event in New York. She also told a story about Ghislaine taking photos for her. Oh yeah, that's because if you take a look at the back of Carol's book she released, What Remains, you will see her photograph. And next to that photograph, you will see a copyright. And the copyright on that photograph was owned by Ghislaine Maxwell. That's right, Ghislaine actually took the photographs for Carol's book of Carol. And she is printed on the back of every book that has ever been released. So obviously I'm not implicating Carol in anything. I don't really think she knew anything about anybody. But it does make one curious, because with such serious things having been happening behind the scenes, and with Ghislaine having been involved in such a dark criminal enterprise, you would imagine that at one or two of these events, Epstein would have shown up. You would also imagine that there might be rumors about X-rated parties being thrown by Ghislaine and Jeffrey, invites being given out to other socialites to attend these depraved events. I always sit back and think these people had to have heard something, whether it was credible or not. They had to have heard a rumor or a whisper about what Ghislaine and Jeffrey were into. But yeah, for now, that's about all we know. Do you want me to try to do her or just torture her? That was in an email sent by Jeffrey Epstein, recently uncovered in the Epstein files. Now, I've talked about this before in my content, but snuff films and extremely violent pornography, all that stuff is unfortunately very real. And yes, there are snuff films involving children that have been produced and sold on the internet. And for those of you who don't believe me, one case out of the many you can look up is that of Daisy's Destruction and Peter Scully. That is a verified snuff film. It's an extremely disturbing rabbit hole. But that's not the only time Epstein references torture and torture videos and photos in these emails. We talked about this one the other day where he said, "Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video." We don't know who that was sent to, but it was sent in 2009. Then in 2018, he sent an email that said, 1, it's kind of cut off, but Madonna on the way. And 2, instead of torture photo, maybe portrait of me instead. And this was sent to, I believe it says up there, Andre Serrano. I don't know what any of this means, but there's a lot of talk of torture video and torture photos in these emails, if you know what I'm getting at. Oh yeah, here's the full email. I should say 1, Madonna on the way. 2, instead of torture photo, maybe portrait of me instead. And then 3, presentation of Trumpville. Don't know what to make of that either. Here we go again with another email in 2015 with an email sent from Epstein to a man named Richard Kahn. Richard has been closely linked with Epstein many, many times. And he says, priority is finding the 20M with Jocelyn. First step equals to torture. Once again, no context as to really what this means, and I'm not understanding at all. Also, just had to throw this in there. There's another email. This is from Epstein to somebody, I can't remember who. I am planning a little torture, ... So, lots of discussion of torture, not only planning torture, and there are more examples that I couldn't fit in this video, but I thought that these were kind of the most damning, especially with the talk about torture videos and photos and plans to torture. And I've said this before and I'll say it again here, what we're seeing right now is only what they are allowing us to see. The real privileged information, the real disturbing emails and texts and videos and photos, we're never going to see that. That stuff either has been gone for a long time or was recently deleted by Pam Bondi's Epstein whatever task force. They would never allow us to see proof of these snuff films or proof of this CSAM that was being produced or proof of these blackmail videos and photographs. But nonetheless, it still begs many a question, obviously. What is the torture video? Why did Epstein love it? Who was this email sent to? Those are answers that I'd love to receive. And if you like hearing me rant about this stuff, be sure to check out my channel, The Conspiracy Files. or you can listen to this show on all platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Jeffrey Epstein was Vladimir Putin's wealth manager and hung out with Donald Trump in 2015? Well, those things are true according to a confidential source. So this is very interesting. So this is, yes, a tip sheet, an information sheet that was filled out by the FBI. However, this is not your average tip sheet. You've probably seen a lot of tips like this, and these tips essentially came in from all different types of people and sources, and they're all pretty much unverified, meaning that anybody could submit a tip and it would have made its way into the files. However, this tip comes from a confidential human source. This is what the FBI calls informants nowadays. Like, think about the guys that got in with the mafia to expose people like John Gotti, basically like moles, rats. That's what a CHS or confidential human source is. So they're a person that the FBI is actually working with who feeds the FBI information, who the FBI deems to be credible. And here's what the informant told the FBI in 2017. Jeffrey Epstein had a compound in New Mexico where he lured and video recorded underage women. Epstein was President Vladimir Putin's wealth manager and provided the same service for Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe. Epstein had some connection to blank from MIT Media Lab, but CHS was unsure of the details. Epstein had dirt on other people. The logs from his flights were made public at some point. Epstein had a mansion on the Upper West Side. Epstein made his money from charging his clients fees to hide their money offshore. Epstein knew former President Bill Clinton and was very close to current President Donald Trump. In the spring of 2015, President Trump had just been to Epstein's property for lunch. So Trump has very publicly tried to state that he kicked Epstein out of his club, but recently some documents were released that showed from his legal team that that never actually happened. I don't know if you saw that story or not, but essentially Trump and his team said, yeah, we didn't technically throw him out, he wasn't a member, that really didn't happen. And now we have an informant that the FBI is working with stating on the record that Trump had lunch with Epstein in 2015, the year before he became president. Now, I've also covered in recent weeks testimonies from other alleged survivors who stated that Trump was at the island during his presidency. And there are reports in the files that Epstein was friends with Trump, or at least in contact with Trump, all through Trump's first presidency up until his death. So, to me, this is an incredibly crazy tip and something just incredibly wild to see. And, I'd like to sit and think that this information would actually cause something to happen and that people would actually treat this as something serious and some serious news, but that isn't what's happening here. And I haven't seen the mainstream media or nightly news talking about this document at all. But as always, y'all let me know your thoughts in the comments and follow along for more updates.